Many of you may be aware that there is widespread agreement, or universal agreement even, I would say, amongst economists, which is virtually impossible in most, in most topics, but there is almost universal agreement. And that, just as there was amongst the classical political economists, such as John Stuart Mill, Adam Smith, and of course Henry George, that the most efficient form of taxation is actually a taxation on the uplift in land value, a land value tax. Because this kind of tax, because land is a scarce commodity, no more can be produced if you tax it. It doesn't distort investment decisions. And of course, it brings land that's not being used effectively, where developers or anyone else is just sitting on it. It should bring that land into more productive use. So, recently the IMF, the OECD, The Economist, the Financial Times have all come out, just in the last 5 years and said we need a major structural reform of taxation systems away from income and potentially away from corporation profits as well, actually, and onto land value, the unearned increment in increases in value of land. So if all economists agree on this, what's stopping it from happening? Well, there are practical barriers. In the UK, we have literally no published data on the value of land. Council tax was last valued in 1991, and even council tax is not a valuation of land, it's a valuation of property plus land, so it doesn't disaggregate between those two things. So that's a potential barrier. But I think the real barrier are political barriers. And there's two issues here. The first is that land value taxes generally are taxed as a sort of lump sum annual levy. And of course, people don't like lump sum annual levy taxes. People don't like council tax. Margaret Thatcher tried the poll tax. That didn't go very well. Much better, I think, would be a tax that is withdrawn from income or is taken away in a less salient fashion, a less visible tax. We need to think about ways of doing that. The biggest problem is basically that the people with the most to lose from this kind of tax are those who run our political system or are at the top of are the 1% essentially. But that may be changing in democracies anyway, as more of us become renters. Or prediction is, I think, in London by 2020, 60% of people will be renting. So there are ways we could try and introduce a land value tax. One way could be to start off with a split level tax, where you're taxing both property and land at the same time, and then gradually reduce the tax on property and increase it on land. Tax neutrality is what we need to aim for. We need to be talking about shifting away from taxing productive activity and income and towards unearned income on land. And of course, one of the key problems would be those people who are equity rich but income poor, like pensioners. So you need to find a way of allowing them to delay their payments or to release equity in their homes to cover their payment. So pensioners could release equity to the state in this kind of land trust or land bank idea, for example. You could use the profits from a land value trust to give everyone an equal citizen's income. That could be another option to get around this problem of certain parts of the population being hit excessively hard by such a tax. I'll move on to finance.